Welcome back to Keep It Real Boxing. This is CypherBox. Yeah, I know it's been a while since I've uploaded a video. Kind of really wanted to do this one. Been a little bit tied up with work and stuff, but anyway, wanted to talk about this weekend's action. This weekend that just went. We're on Saturday night in Cardiff. Kind of wanted to kill a few birds with the same stone, so probably going to do one long lengthy video on this whole subject as they all tie in with each other. So I want to talk about Dillian Whyte versus Robert Helenius, Anthony Joshua versus Carlos Takam, and then obviously talk a bit about Deontay Wilder and, you know, a few other names who have been voicing their opinion on the whole subject of Deontay Wilder versus Anthony Joshua. So let's get started. Let's start with Dillian Whyte versus Robert Helenius. Now, decent fight. It was a good fight. It wasn't the greatest. It wasn't exactly like a candidate for fight of the year or anything like that. We know it went 12 rounds if you watched the fight on Saturday night. Just going to quickly kind of like analyse the fight itself. So first couple of rounds, Helenius comes in. And those two first rounds literally went to Helenius. Very, I suppose, not negative, but very defensive in his approach. Tall, had a long reach, taller than Dillian Whyte, had more of a reach than Dillian Whyte, and clearly was set out to use that height and reach advantage over Dillian Whyte, and it kind of worked for the first two rounds. Leaned back a lot, popped the jab, looking for that counter right every time Dillian, Dillian likes to throw those wild overhand right haymakers of his. Throws himself off balance, but then gets caught with a counter right, and that did happen on occasions against Helenius. Third round onwards, I pretty much scored it all to Dillian Whyte. He started to kind of find his rhythm, and just started systematically, to break down Helenius, really. Getting on the inside, working the body a lot more, working the body, then finishing with a right hook or a left hook. Obviously, wasn't going to win the battle of the jab with Helenius. He was taller, he had more of a reach. Basically, got the job done. There's not much really more to say than that in terms of Dillian Whyte's performance. In terms of does this performance do any favours for Dillian Whyte in terms of his pursuit of Deontay Wilder or, Joseph Parker? I don't think it does. I don't think Deontay Wilder or even Joseph Parker, to be honest with you, would watch that performance against Helenius and feel worried that, Dillian Whyte, that they couldn't beat Dillian Whyte. If anything, I think they would have probably gained confidence from it. There's a few things I think Dillian needs to work on. I don't know whether he should really push for a world title shot after watching that performance on Saturday night. I mean, in my opinion, Dillian's got a few things to work on, and one of the things I think Dillian needs to work on is the first thing he needs to work on is his balance. His balance was really poor. He seemed like every time he would get hit or every time, he would try to launch an offensive attack on Helenius, he would be off balance, like wobbly a little bit. Like his pivoting is really poor as well. So, you're not able to turn into your punches and generate that momentum and that power for your punches, to land onto your opponent. And sometimes he did catch Helenius on the body and on the sides of the face, with hooks, left hooks, right hooks. And I just feel like it's something he needs to work on. Footwork and balance is so important in boxing. We all know that. One, so you can keep yourself, if you get punched by an opponent, you know how to keep yourself up. Two, to be able to generate your own momentum and be able to pivot, nicely and sharply on your feet, so you can turn into your punches and create that power you need to hurt your opponent. And I think Dillian Whyte throws these punches, he throws these big haymakers and these overhand rights, etc. But because his balance is always off, his punches don't generate as much power. He doesn't generate as much power in his punches as he should. Because he's a big guy. But because his balance is off, because his pivoting on his front foot is so poor, he doesn't knock his opponents out clean. The last fight against Tan he was, but in America when he fought under the Terence Crawford undercard. He knocked his opponent out, but you know, Helenius, you know, a little bit different, a bit more experienced, and he was taller as well. So if you're looking for that knockout against a guy like that, you've got to have good balance. His balance was off. You know, that's the worst. I think that was one of the things that really irritated me about Dillian Whyte on Saturday night, is that, you know, he needs to work on those things, you know. And he just, he would try and throw these wild haymaker overhand rights. You know, Helenius would just step out the way and catch him with a quick hook. You know, he would fall into the ropes. You know, against Deontay Wilder, you know, you're going to get punished for that, and you're going to get hurt. And we know Deontay Wilder, he hits hard. And, you know, you're throwing yourself in a position where Deontay Wilder could just knock you out with a punch. So I think it's something that Dillian Whyte needs to work on. He talks about other fighters, you know, they're poor, etc. In terms of their skill sets. But that's one set of Dillian Whyte's, I have to be honest about it, I feel is extremely poor. He needs to work on his balance. He needs to work on generating power and pivoting on that front foot. You know, he needs to be clean and crisp in terms of when he throws his punches. So that 1-2 needs to be fast. He needs to work on his hand speed a little bit more, maybe cut a bit of weight. So I think he's got a lot to work on, and in my opinion, I don't think he should pursue a fight against Deontay Wilder just yet. Maybe Parker, he might have a bit of a chance the way he fights at the moment against Joseph Parker, but I don't think against Deontay Wilder. I think Deontay Wilder, in my personal opinion, right now on that performance, I would confidently say to myself that Deontay Wilder would win that fight. That's how I would see it. But I know, look, Dillian Whyte's a tough guy, don't get me wrong. I've got nothing against Dillian Whyte. You all know, I actually like him. I think he's a funny character. Got a lot of time for him, but just based on that performance, I don't think Dillian Whyte would beat Deontay Wilder. But let's not forget, you know, Dillian Whyte did have only, I think it was 14 days notice, so 2 weeks, that he was going to fight Robert Helenius. You know, he got a bit of criticism from the pundits, and you know, the reason I want to talk about this fight first, and obviously what the pundits on Sky Sports pundits had to say, is because it kind of ties in with the Joshua part as well of this video. And Johnny Nelson, Matthew Macklin, Tony Bellew were the pundits for Sky Sports that night, and Johnny Nelson, Matthew Macklin kind of defended Dillian Whyte, saying that 14 days notice, he didn't know who he's fighting, you know, didn't have the sparring partners, etc. It's hard because you couldn't pick the right sparring partners to imitate your opponent. So you know, they were pretty much saying, oh, it wasn't the greatest performance, but he got the job done. But it wasn't the greatest performance in the world, and it's the same thing I was saying. Tony Bellew on the other hand was a lot more critical, saying that, well, he needs to put on a bit more of a show, that, you know, Helenius was a European level fighter, and if you can't do the job on him, you know, what chance have you got against the Deontay Wilders, etc. He was quite harsh on Dillian Whyte. He wasn't as, I suppose, accepting of the fact that Dillian Whyte only had 14 days notice to fight Helenius, and vice versa. Helenius didn't have, you know, he only had like 2 weeks notice as well, let's be honest. But the reason I bring this part up about Tony Bellew and his criticism of Dillian Whyte is because it kind of, like I said, it ties in with the whole Joshua Takam, and then goes on, obviously ties in a little bit with Joshua and Wilder, which I will talk about in a minute. But overall, when it comes to Dillian Whyte, it was a decent performance. He got the job done, but I wouldn't see Deontay Wilder or Joseph Parker quaking in their boots after watching that fight. You know, if anything, I think they would have walked away with more confidence that they feel they could beat Dillian Whyte. And I think Dillian Whyte definitely needs to go away, have a little bit of reflection, and work on some of those things that I just spoke about. Alright, so let's move on to Carlos Takam, Anthony Joshua. Good fight, I enjoyed it. Carlos Takam, shout out to him, a true ring warrior. Nothing I didn't already know about Carlos Takam. I have spoken about Carlos Takam briefly in the past when referring to Joseph Parker. He gave Joseph Parker a hell of a fight, and you know, I know he's a tough nut to crack. Not gonna lie, I was disappointed in what I saw as a premature stoppage, and I will go on and talk about why I thought that was a premature stoppage and the fight shouldn't have been stopped. A lot of people, you know, especially the Sky Sports team, etc., who were commentating, and the pundits, you know, were saying that the fight should have been stopped, etc., and stuff like that. But I don't agree, and I think there was a little bit of I feel there's a bit of excuse making, etc., being made for Anthony Joshua on the night. Now, I don't know how, like, a lot of people are talking, oh yeah, well, it was a last minute replacement, he only had 10 days or 12 days notice or whatever it was, and Anthony Joshua, had to adjust in 12 days. But I'm going to get onto all those points, believe me, yeah? So, for me, Anthony Joshua, it wasn't his greatest performance. I get the feeling he thought this was going to be a walk in the park against Carlos Takam, smaller guy, 12 days notice. He thought I personally think him and Eddie Hearn and his team believed they would walk through Carlos Takam 3 or 4 rounds, knock him out, and job done, move on to the next. That's what I think. That's the feeling I get from the team Joshua. And the reason I say that is, I know he comes out quite relaxed to a fight and the way he is in the changing rooms, but usually he's warming up pretty well, etc. It was a little bit too relaxed in that changing room, I feel, than normal, in my opinion. And I honestly believe he thought he was going to walk through this guy on Saturday night. Now, don't get me wrong, Joshua definitely won near enough every round. If maybe Carlos Takam might have nicked one, but Carlos Takam fought well. For a guy who only had 12 days notice, to fight who's seen a fighter who's seen as the #1 heavyweight in the world. He did really well. He rolling those shoulders, ducking low, rolling out of the way of punches. Showed no fear whatsoever. Wasn't scared of Anthony Joshua at all. Wasn't intimidated by him. Truly believed he could beat him, and he was going to go for it. And he put on a great performance. I question a little bit the referee's performance as well. I think the referee at times, got involved when he probably shouldn't have got involved, and disrupted Carlos Takam's rhythm at times. It's little things like in the 4th round, he stuck his hand out and said something, distracted Carlos Takam, and then Anthony Joshua came in on the attack. And there were a number of occasions like that where that happened. The constant getting the ring doctor in. You could have done that in between rounds. So I just feel like the referee got a little bit too involved at times. Don't get me wrong, I know he had to make sure that the eyes were alright, that Carlos Takam's injuries were okay. But you could have easily invited the referee, between rounds and say, hey, quick, before we start this round, get a look at him first. But he was doing it during the rounds, and sometimes when Carlos Takam was doing alright in the fight, a bit of blood was coming out, but he was doing alright in those moments, and he would stop the fight. So I just felt like the referee got a little bit too involved at times, and all involved at the wrong times, should I say. Now, like I said, I kind of wanted to talk about the commentating and what the pundits said as well, on the night. And I think the main person I probably want to talk about is Tony Bellew. I felt Tony Bellew contradicted himself so many times during his commentating, and then, even at his post-fight analysis of what went on in the ring that night. For example, in between rounds 7 and 8, Tony Bellew said, usually I would ask for the fight to be stopped, but this is the biggest and richest prize in boxing, the heavyweight world titles. And, you can't stop a fight of this magnitude, were Tony Bellew's words. Now remember that, because I'm going to obviously reference it towards the end of the video as well when I talk about what was said after the fight. Alright, so let's quickly talk about Anthony Joshua, and in terms of his performance. I have to say, disappointed with Anthony Joshua. He came in at 18 stone, which is a career heaviest for him. I think that was heavier than the fight against Klitschko, that's for sure. And he looked slower. His punches didn't look as quick or as snappy as we're used to seeing. I also believe he was the weight he was carrying, and all those big muscles he's got, etc. I've said this about him before. Didn't help him in there on the night, and the reason I say that is that I felt he gassed out after the 4th round. You know, by the time he got to the 4th round, I think he assumed he would get Carlos Takam out of there by then. And this is what I'm on about. He assumed he would get Carlos Takam out of there, and he went for it in the first 4 rounds and gassed himself out. The rest of the fight, he started struggling. Yeah, he had a broken nose from the accidental headbutt, but in the 2nd round, we know that. But at the same time, you know, you think with the amount of training he does all year round, you know, he would build a good level of endurance and stamina. And I think that failed him definitely on Saturday night. You know, he didn't look sharp. Sometimes, you know, he was up against the ropes when Carlos Takam would hold him, etc., and push him back. You know, and you just see it in his face, like, you know, he take a breath and like, you know, I'm knackered. You know, this guy just won't stop coming. And I think all those muscles all that bodybuilding he doesn't help him. He needs to slim it down a little bit more. He needs to trim himself up. You know, he needs to make himself a little bit more agile, less rigid in there, and focus more on actually endurance training rather than lifting weights, in my personal opinion. And because it showed on Saturday night, and it didn't help his performance, in my opinion. I mean, there was a moment in round 10 where he was up against the rope, and Carlos Takam was holding him, and you know they were in a clinch, and he had his back to the rope, Anthony Joshua, and he looked down, and even Adam Smith, who was commentating, said to Carl Froch, "Look, he just looked down at you, Carl," as to say like, this guy just won't stop coming. And you could feel that, you know, Anthony Joshua was feeling the pace in there, you know, which, don't get me wrong, I know these guys are big, they're heavyweights, etc., but you've got to be smart in terms of how you train. You've got to be able to, you know, you should be training and making sure you have an endurance level and a stamina level that will help you at least go 12 rounds. Now, let's talk about the stoppage in the 10th. Like, I was seriously disappointed by that. Yeah, okay, Carlos Takam took a couple of combinations. He took a few hard shots. He did walk back a little bit, but by no means was he out on his feet. You know, he was not out on his feet. You know, he still had his senses about him. He was still able to fight. Now, a lot of people are saying, well, he lost the fight anyway. You know, there was Anthony Joshua near enough won every single round. You know, what was the point? You might as well just call the fight, stop the fight. But this is my point on this, yeah? And I'm going to reference a few things, a few other fights, a few other performances from the past, and even from when I was a kid watching boxing. And my point here is, you know what? Carlos Takam fought so well, so brave. He was so brave in there. He showed a lot of guts. You know, he showed no fear whatsoever. You know, he gave Anthony Joshua, even if Anthony Joshua won every single round, he gave Anthony Joshua a tough night in the ring. You know, a night I don't think he'll want ever again. He'll never want to step in the ring with Carlos Takam again, I can assure you that. And he had earned the right and deserved to go out how he wanted to go out. Yeah? You don't know if Anthony Joshua was going to stop him. Carlos Takam throughout the fight was taking punishment like that at times, in moments. And Carlos Takam still kept coming back. He would take another shot like that. Even when he got knocked down, when not knocked down, but when his hand touched, when he went back and he fell back on and one of his hands touched the ground, that counted as a knockdown, of course. He still got back up, he still came back from it. He's one of those guys who just won't stop. So you've got to give him that opportunity to, you know, to finish the fight. Not only that, let's not forget, yeah, this is boxing, this is heavyweight boxing. Now, a lot of people were saying, obviously, he doesn't have the power to hurt Anthony Joshua, or knock out Anthony Joshua, or change the dynamics of the fight, of how they were going at the time. You don't know that. We've seen Anthony Joshua get wobbled when a glove hits his chin. You know, heavyweight boxing, it happens. I'm not saying he's got a weak chin, but we've seen it happen. So you don't know if Carlos Takam's going to bend down, throw in that overhand right, and just give it that one good hard shot, and that could change the fight. So you took that away from him as well, and I don't agree with the stoppage. There was nothing. If you look at Carlos Takam, his response to when the referee did that, the referee went over the top of him, put his hand over his head and said, no, waved his hand, and he immediately got up and said, what are you doing? I genuinely think Carlos Takam thought for a second that it was Anthony Joshua who had him in a headlock. Yeah? And when he probably saw the blue shirt, he was like, what is going on? Like, whoa, no, you shouldn't have stopped that. I was still good to go. And if you look at those combinations, just as before the referee was jumping in, a lot of those punches were either missing from Anthony Joshua, some of them were landing, but some of them weren't landing cleanly. Some of them were just skimming the top of the head. So I think it was a premature stoppage. I agree with Johnny Nelson and Matthew Macklin. I think it was a premature stoppage. You know, I don't think he was at that time, I don't think he was any serious trouble. You know, let him finish the fight. If he goes out on his shield, let him go out on his shield. Do you know what I mean? If he gets knocked down and he can't get back up, I understood that. But I personally, throughout the fight, I saw moments like that where Anthony Joshua landed hard shots, uppercuts, right hooks, etc. And Carlos Takam continuously came back from him and would go forward and then go after Anthony Joshua. So in my opinion, I think it was a poor stoppage. He should have been allowed to finish the fight. You know, he still had that puncher's chance. And in my opinion, I think it was a poor stoppage. And I am going to talk about, again, our friend Tony Bellew, because he made some where he contradicted himself again, and I'm referencing to things he said in the past and other fights that he's commentated on. So I'm not really going to talk about Johnny Nelson and Matthew Macklin, because I think my points of view of this fight, again, you know, between Joshua and Takam kind of matches theirs. But Tony Bellew kind of annoyed me a little bit with his comments at the end of the fight and the things he was saying. Now, as he was commentating, one of the things he says that, you know, yes, Takam was throwing punches, but could he win? He wasn't out on his feet. No, he wasn't. So you agree he wasn't out on his feet? Yeah? So Tony Bellew agrees that, but then said it was still a good stoppage because you just don't know what's going to happen. Well, that had happened. This is my point. That was happening throughout the fight. Carlos Takam was finding himself in trouble spots like that where Joshua would land hard combinations or one punch would land seriously hard and hurt him, and he would back off a little bit, and then Joshua would come forward and start putting on an offensive assault, and Takam would come back. He's that kind of guy. He's a tough guy. Yeah, seen him do that. Seen that against Joseph Parker. You know, in this fight against Joseph Parker, he had a tough fight against Povetkin. So, do you know what I mean? This is a guy who's that durable. He can take it, yeah? And he's got heart. So, in my opinion, if you're saying he wasn't out on his feet, then clearly it wasn't a good stoppage. You know, yet you're saying he was out on his feet, but because he couldn't win, it was a good stoppage. There was no point going on. But like I said, you've always got a puncher's chance. And the point I'm going to reference here now, yeah, is some past fights, for example, yeah? So let's go back to Kell Brook versus Errol Spence Jr. here in the UK, in Sheffield, where Kell Brook put his IBF title on the line against Errol Spence Jr. Now, we all know, if you watch enough boxing and you watch that fight, you know what happened in that fight. Kell Brook probably won the first half of the fight. So the first 7 rounds, I probably gave him 5 of them. He outboxed, he was doing really well. And then in the 7th round, he injured his eye again. And it wasn't the same eye he injured against Triple G. It was the other eye. And it was the same injury, a broken orbital bone. Now, he went on, I think it was the 10th round the fight ended. If I remember, 10th or 11th, I can't remember now. Well, it was the 10th round, yeah. So Kell Brook went on a few more rounds trying to fight through it, and Errol Spence came back into the fight, started breaking down Kell, started really putting some punishment on that eye. Kell Brook. Now, one thing a lot of you guys don't, I want to say before I go on, is that Kell Brook, when he got injured, he injured his eye against Triple G, and he went to see a surgeon about it, a specialist about it, and the doctor turned around and said to him, "You're lucky you could have gone blind." Now, when you tell that to a fighter, you're setting a psychological roadblock in his head without him even realizing it. And then when he gets into the ring, that's when he realizes, that's when that psychological block becomes a problem. So obviously he started having the same problem with his other eye against Errol Spence. You know what happened. He took a knee in the 10th round and counted himself out. Tony Bellew, yeah, was so critical of Kell Brook and what happened in that fight. He kept saying, "Oh no, you know, I love Kell to bits, but you don't quit on a fight like that. It's a world championship fight. You had 2 more rounds to go. one punch could have changed the dynamics of the fight, could have changed the direction of the fight, and swung it back in his favour. He shouldn't have quit. He should have just gone out on his shield. If Errol Spence knocks him out and stops him, then so be it. But at least he can walk away knowing that he tried to still go for it, and he gave it everything he got. Yeah. So he was massively critical of Kell Brook. In my opinion, a lot of people were critical of Kell Brook. Me personally, I thought, you know what? Live to fight another day. And a lot of people, as fans, we don't think about it. That these fighters, they have wives, they have families, they have kids, and he did the best thing he thought was for him. And fair play to him. I'm not going to knock him for that. Sorry, I'm not gonna. I'm not a pro fighter, so I'm not going to criticise him for taking a knee and quitting like that. But Tony Bellew, on the other hand, was literally all over him, saying that he shouldn't have quit. He should have fought to the end. One punch could have changed it. It's a world title fight. This is a fight that can, make or break his career, etc. All that sort of stuff. And he gave Kell Brook a hard time over that. So why is it now, when it came to Carlos Takam versus Anthony Joshua, you were saying, oh, you never know though, Carlos Takam could have got seriously injured, it's just not worth it, he was losing every round, it's best to stop the fight. Yet Carlos Takam wasn't complaining. Carlos Takam wasn't trying to get out of the fight. Carlos Takam wasn't out on his feet, which you yourself, Mr. Tony Bellew, turned around and said. Yeah? So, what you're saying doesn't make sense. You can't say in one fight, which is, I've given you an example like Kell Brook against Errol Spence, you should have gone out your shield, and then in a fight, months later, between Anthony Joshua and Carlos Takam, and say, oh, you had to protect the fighter, he wasn't out on his feet, but you just never know what's going to happen. You got to think of the safety of the fighter. But you didn't care when it came to Kell Brook. And this is what I'm talking about. It's that protection, that excuse making for the referee getting it wrong. It was a poor stoppage. That's the way I saw it. And, I am going to be critical of it. And I don't agree with it. And I don't agree with Tony Bellew's comments on the night either. Sorry to say, I don't. So let's talk about what else Tony Bellew said in the post-fight analysis. He was talking about how Anthony Joshua had only 12 days to prepare for Carlos Takam, and last minute you've got to change the, your sparring. You've got sparring partners that imitate the fighter you thought you were going to fight, which was Pulev, of course, Kubrat Pulev, and now suddenly you've got to fight this smaller heavyweight who's got a different style compared to Pulev, and you're not able to adjust. It's hard to adjust, and it makes it hard when you get on the fight when you get in the ring on fight night, because you're not quite sure what's in front of you. What's this guy gonna bring? You haven't prepared yourself mentally or watched enough footage on him, etc. and stuff like that. Okay, you know what? That's not a bad comment. I get what he's trying to say, but then why were you giving Deontay Wilder? Not Deontay Wilder. Why were you giving Dillian Whyte trying to give Dillian Whyte a hard time about his performance against Robert Helenius? Dillian Whyte only had 14 days to prepare for Robert Helenius. I didn't see you standing there saying, well, don't get me wrong, shout out to Johnny Nelson and Matthew Macklin again, because they did reference and saying that he only had 14 days to prepare for him, but Tony Bellew didn't. Tony Bellew was saying, well, no, the performance wasn't great, he should have got this European level fighter out of there, he had to put on a better performance than that. But not once were you turning around and saying, well, you know what, I feel for Dillian because it was a last minute fight. He only got told on 14 days notice that you're going to fight this individual. He wouldn't have had time to prepare for it. He wouldn't have had time to review fight footage. He wouldn't have been able to get in enough sparring against fighters who could imitate Robert Helenius. Basically the reasons he was trying to justify Anthony Joshua's poor performance on the night. So again, contradicting yourself. Both Anthony Joshua and Dillian Whyte had literally 2 weeks to prepare for their opponents. Yet for Anthony Joshua, there's excuses. For Dillian Whyte, there wasn't. Go back and watch the fight. Go and watch the commentary. Go and watch the in-between fights and post-fight analysis on the night. You know, it's there in your face. I've seen the fight twice, and I've seen the commentary and the post-fight analysis twice now. And I'm sorry, Tony Bellew quite clearly was standing there trying to make excuses for Anthony Joshua's poor performance. It wasn't a great performance by Anthony Joshua. You know, it was an enjoyable fight, but it wasn't a great performance by him. Let's be honest, it's probably his worst performance we've seen in a long time. You know, especially on the back of Vladimir Klitschko, the victory he had over Vladimir Klitschko. You know, it was a poor performance. Fighters, heavyweights have actually taken confidence from Anthony Joshua's performance on Saturday night. Gerald Big Baby Miller put out a video on Instagram saying, you know, and he literally ended the video saying, Deontay, if you don't get him, I'm gonna get him, because I'm gonna beat this guy. He walked away with so much confidence. Joseph Parker, I've just seen an article recently on, I think it was on BoxingScene.com, and he thinks he can knock Anthony Joshua out now. So, you know it's not a good performance when you've got other fighters gaining confidence from what they saw. And I feel that Tony Bellew, Eddie Hearn, etc., you know, I feel like the referee kind of protected Anthony Joshua as well by stopping the fight. They wanted to keep that winning streak going. People talk about corruption in boxing lately, all these things, you know, like Triple G, Canelo. In the past year or so, you've had, you know, the first fight between Andre Ward and Sergey Kovalev. So let's talk about it now. I think, you know, they literally protected Anthony Joshua to keep his winning streak going. Because if this fight had gone the distance, then Anthony Joshua's position in terms of negotiations with Deontay Wilder may have weakened a little bit. You know, because they've been talking about, you know, the split for that fight against Wilder. I've heard 85-15, you know, 85 to Joshua, 15% to Wilder, which I think is kind of disrespectful to Deontay Wilder. I don't think he should get 50-50, because I do think Joshua's probably a bit of a bigger name than Deontay Wilder in terms of his popularity, his commerciality, you know, in terms of the way he's promoted. So, you know, you could and the fact that it's probably going to be Matchroom who and Sky Sports who promote the fight. You know, I think a 30% for Deontay Wilder would be fair. 70-30 split would probably be fair. So, you know, I think Anthony Joshua on Saturday night was maybe protected a little bit. I think Tony Bellew was definitely trying to protect Anthony Joshua and his performance, because the performance from Dillian Whyte against Helenius and was pretty much the same in terms of how Anthony Joshua's performance went against Carlos Takam. In terms of, they weren't great performances, they were get the job done performances. Yeah, and the fact that they both had 2 weeks to prep for their opponents. Yet the reasoning from Tony Bellew for Dillian Whyte was, no, you know, he should have put on a performance. He should have got his this European level fighter out there. And then for Anthony Joshua, it was a different story. Well, it's very difficult because you got to train for, you know, you got to train for a smaller fighter, you know, a different style of fighter, and with only 10 days notice, it's very hard to adjust. So I think Anthony Joshua did really well considering. But you didn't say the same about Dillian Whyte. And this is what I'm talking about. Now, the other thing I want to reference, because there was another fight from when I was a kid, I'm going to reference. Now, this is what I'm talking about, the puncher's chance. Yeah? So where I believe it was a premature stoppage, because I think Carlos Takam was taking that kind of punishment all night and he was doing fine. He kept coming back, kept coming back, and he had the right, he had earned the right to go the distance with Anthony Joshua. And that was one of the things I think the fight was stopped, because they didn't want it to go the distance. Yeah? They didn't want this little guy to be the guy who took Anthony Joshua to 12 rounds for the first time in his career. You know, because people would not let him live it down. But I want to talk about the puncher's chance, where I said that, yeah, I don't think he'd go and win the last 2 rounds and win the fight. Of course he wouldn't. He didn't win. He only won maybe 1 round. So he only had that puncher's chance of a knockout or a stoppage. Yeah? And the thing I want to reference is a fight from when I was a kid. Yeah? So who remembers Chris Eubank Sr. versus Michael Watson 2, the rematch? Right? In that fight, if you watch the first fight between them two, I think Eubank won that fight. He got the decision. Fair enough. In the second fight, Michael Watson was all over Eubank Sr. He was all over him, Michael Watson. And obviously that fight ended very tragically. I will explain to those who are a little bit younger and maybe don't know what happened in that fight or who these guys are. But Michael Watson was winning that fight. I think it was the 11th round. He knocked Eubank. He knocked Eubank down. Eubank took a knee, went down to the ground. got back up, and the ref counted to 8, told him to carry on fighting. He walked straight into the corner of where Michael Watson was, and threw a shot and knocked Michael Watson out of his boots onto the ground. Now, it was really tragic what happened, because that was the punch that probably caused him the severe brain damage he had to suffer and put him in the disabled state that he is now. Shout out to Michael Watson. He's a legend, in my opinion, quality fighter in his day as well. He was out of Eubank, him and Nigel Benn. Even though I was a Nigel Benn fan, Michael Watson was the better technical boxer at all three of those guys. And shout out to him. But that punch, you know, he got knocked down from in that fight from one punch. Eubank came back, got him back on his feet, and went up to him and just threw that one punch. He came out in the second round. Eubank put the pressure on him and stopped the fight, and the referee stopped the fight. Even though Eubank was losing the fight, even though Eubank lost majority of the rounds, and Watson was the clear winner at that point on points. On the judges' cards, he would have been the clear winner. He would have won it. Eubank still had that puncher's chance, even though he got down. You didn't see the referee saying, "Oh no, that's it. You've gone down. Stop the fight. That's it. You lost the fight on. You clearly lost the fight on rounds, on points. Michael's got this fight. We're gonna stop this now because you're gonna get hurt." No, it was a championship fight. He got him. He got back up. The ref counted to 8, gave him an 8 count, and said, "Let's fight." And Christian Eubank Senior knew that he had to stop Michael Watson, and he threw that shot, and he got his win, and he got the victory on the night. And that's what I'm talking about, a puncher's chance. Yeah, Carlos Takam may have not have done that against Anthony Joshua, but you robbed him of that opportunity. He wasn't out on his feet. Tony Bellew even himself has said that, which I've already told you what he said earlier on in the video. Yeah. Johnny Nelson, Matthew Macklin agree with me. It was a poor stoppage. You should have allowed him to continue because he wasn't out on his feet. He'd taken punishment like that throughout the fight, and he still kept coming back. So you had to give him that opportunity. To me, I felt like the referee just was looking for an opportunity to stop the fight. The amount of times he got the doctor up on the ring to look at the injury, the amount of times he kind of distracted Takam in the fight, and then Anthony Joshua pounced and throw an attack. You know, for me, you know, they just wanted that fight to stop. They did not want it to go to 12 rounds because it wouldn't look good for Anthony Joshua, in my opinion. So let's talk about the ring interviews, what Anthony Joshua had to say. He was asked about Deontay Wilder. I'm not really going to go through the whole interview. I'm just going to pick out the things, the important stuff. And he talked about the fight against Wilder. Like I said, he was asked about it, and he said, yeah, that fight has to happen, but he has mandatory obligations he has to meet first. So I'm guessing he's referencing his WBA mandatory challenger, which isn't Luis Ortiz anymore, because Luis Ortiz has been suspended for 6 months for his failed VADA drug test. Tested positive for high blood pressure pills, which are used to mask PEDs. But he did say he needs to meet his mandatory obligations first. So whoever that WBA mandatory challenge is going to be, we'll have to wait and see. Which I get, and he also said that, look, I worked so hard to get these titles, I'm not just going to give them up for one fight. And you know what, I get it, I do get that. You know, at the end of the day, he's holding 3 world titles. You know, why should he have to give up one of them just so he can fight Deontay Wilder? Get your mandatories out of the way, fair enough, and then get on to Deontay Wilder. But I do believe that fight against Deontay Wilder should happen next year. It has to happen next year. You know, like I just said to you, a lot of people are saying that, oh, Deontay Wilder needs to build his name more, he needs to build his profile more. I don't necessarily agree with that, and I'll tell you why I don't agree with that. Because everyone is talking about this fight right now. Everybody. Yeah? Everyone on YouTube is talking about it. Okay? Everyone in mainstream media is talking about it. I've even got casual boxing fans or non-existent boxing fans who watch a fight maybe once a year or once every 2 years asking me about that fight at work. Like, you know, what's going on with that fight? Is it going to happen? So, in my opinion, there are people out there, the casual fan base, who know who Deontay Wilder is. And there's been so much noise about it lately that if they didn't know before, they do now. So I don't necessarily agree. It's the hottest topic in boxing at this moment in time. It is the #1 topic. Everything you see is Deontay Wilder, Anthony Joshua, Deontay Wilder. You mentioned Joseph Parker, you talk about both Anthony Joshua and Deontay Wilder. You talk about Dillian Whyte, you talk about Anthony Joshua and Deontay Wilder. You know what I mean? You talk about Tony Bellew, you talk about those two. David, whoever you talk about in that heavyweight division, those two names crop up. Deontay Wilder and Anthony Joshua. So I don't believe. I saw a video a couple of weeks ago where someone suggested that Joseph Parker was a more popular name and well-known name amongst casuals than Deontay Wilder. I don't agree with that, because I don't have any casual fans, and I've got a lot of them at work talking to me about Joseph Parker. They don't even know who Joseph Parker is. They don't even know. If I mention Joseph Parker, they go, who's that? But they know who Deontay Wilder is, especially recently. They've learned a little bit more about him. So you're already getting the hype for this fight. I don't necessarily believe he needs to build his name up anymore. You know, you just need to promote the fight well enough. You know, and you've got enough time. If you make this fight for August, for example, then, do you know what I mean? You've got enough time to build his name and promote the fight. And Eddie Hearn, if he's leading the promotion, even better. Because if you didn't know, and if you don't know who he is, you will soon enough find out who he is. So I don't buy that. These are the two best heavyweights on the face of the planet right now, and it needs to happen, in my opinion. Now, Eddie Hearn kind of named 3 names, you know, in terms of who Joshua's going to fight. He's going to fight 3 times in 2018. We want that Tyson Fury fight, he said. He said we want we want Tyson Fury to come back. You know, we want to make that fight. That's going to be a great fight, etc. Yeah, I agree it would be a great fight, but there's no way you're going to get Tyson Fury back in the ring in 2018 against Anthony Joshua. I'm sorry. And there's a number of reasons for that. First of all, Sky Sports today put up, or should I say, depending when I upload this video, on the 30th of October, Sky Sports have put up an article saying that the UKAD, okay, are still looking to resume the hearing for Tyson Fury's failed drug test back in 2015. And they're waiting on Fury's legal team to tell them when they're ready to resume that hearing. But he still needs to finish off that hearing, and it hasn't been finished off. And they also want to find out if he's fit and healthy from a mental state, because he does have mental illnesses. He has a mental illness. He's suffering from depression, etc., and stuff like that. They want to make sure he's in the right place mentally to be able to fight as well. So there's a lot of things still that got to happen. First, he's got to get that sorted out. Then he's got to come back, decide he wants to come back. Then he's got to get back into training. He's at the moment, he's probably walking around about 300 pounds. He's got to trim that back down to a decent weight where he can, you know, he can perform in the ring. And then once he does that, he's then got to have a few tune-up fights. I think he needs at least 2 or 3 tune-up fights before he even thinks about stepping in the ring with Wilder or Joshua or Parker or any other top heavyweight out there. So that fight's not going to happen in 2018. And I can tell you why they want that fight to happen in 2018. Because they know with Tyson Fury, where he is at right now, he'll have to lose all that weight. He'll have one quick tune-up. He won't be ready. The ring rust wouldn't have knocked off that easily with that tune-up fight. They get him in the ring, Anthony Joshua could beat him easy. They don't want Tyson Fury to take a year to have a few tune-up fights, get himself acquainted back with being in the ring, get himself in a position. They don't want the same Tyson Fury that fought Vladimir Klitschko. That's how I see that, in my opinion. They mentioned Joseph Parker as well. I told you Joseph Parker, I read an article where he recently thinks he, on the back of the Carlos Takam performance from Anthony Joshua, he believes that he can knock out AJ. Be interesting to see. I don't believe that, but it'll be interesting to see how that fight would go. But that's a good option. I'm not going to knock that because he has got a WBO title. And then they mentioned Deontay Wilder. But in interviews with, you know, these boxing interview channels on YouTube, Eddie Hearn's talking about, and he's giving interviews to BoxingScene.com, etc. He's turned around and said that, you know, that Deontay Wilder needs to fight Dillian Whyte, but even if he fights Dillian Whyte, there's no guarantee he's going to get Anthony Joshua. So why is he fighting? Why is he going to fight Dillian Whyte then? Personally, I don't think, like I said, I don't think Dillian Whyte should take that fight right now. He's got a few things to work on, but let's say that is the case. So then why, you know, why is he going to take that fight against Dillian Whyte? You know, and don't talk to me about raising your profile rubbish. I don't want to hear that. I really don't want to hear that, because that makes no sense to me whatsoever. I've already explained myself for that. With the hype that's going around this fight, Deontay Wilder's name is getting known more and more because of the hype. It's the #1 topic. It's the hottest topic in boxing right now. So why is he going to take that fight? And Deontay Wilder has turned around and said, yeah, he's asked for 7 million, which I think is a bit much. He's not going to get that against Dillian Whyte. Dillian Whyte's not going to bring that kind of money in. He's not a star like that, a superstar or anything like that. But he's also asked that I'll fight Dillian Whyte, I ain't got a problem, I'll go in there and I'll knock him out. But I want in the contract a guarantee that I get Anthony Joshua next. And Eddie Hearn's turned around and said, well, it doesn't work like that. But you're contradicting yourself again. You're saying on one hand, the road to Anthony Joshua is through Dillian Whyte to Deontay Wilder. And then when he says, yeah, fine, fair enough, put it in the contract, you say, no, it doesn't work like that, we don't put it in the contract. Do you see what I'm trying to say? You're contradicting yourself. So what is it? Either, you know, the road to Anthony Joshua, you know, is through Dillian Whyte, or it's not. And if it is, put it in the contract then. Guarantee the man that, you know what, if you fight Dillian Whyte, if you come into the UK and you fight Dillian Whyte and you knock him out and you get through that successfully, we will give you Anthony Joshua in 2018. But no one's willing to, he's not willing to do that, Eddie Hearn. It's politics, boxing politics, games are being played, people are contradicting themselves now, and I feel like Eddie Hearn, every time I hear an Eddie Hearn interview now, I like Eddie Hearn, don't get me wrong, I enjoy watching his interview, especially on IFL, I think he's a funny bloke, but I get the feeling every time he talks about this whole Anthony, especially now since Saturday, after what happened on Saturday night, I think I starting to get the feeling that there's more and more pressure on Eddie Hearn, and he's starting to slip in terms of what he's saying. You know, and Lou DiBella just recently tweeted as well, saying something on the lines of told Eddie Hearn to get the F out of here. You know, we don't fight chumps, we fight champs. We don't travel for chumps, we travel for champs. So basically saying that we're not going to come over there to fight Dillian Whyte. We will come over there to fight Anthony Joshua. So, do you know what I mean? Eddie Hearn needs to stop pushing this whole Deontay Wilder. Don't get me wrong, I did a video a long time ago where I felt, yeah, it would be a good fight that Deontay Wilder should fight Dillian Whyte, but that was because I thought, well, hold on, Bermane-Stiverne hadn't been confirmed that it was going to be Bermane-Stiverne on the 4th of November, and I thought, well, why don't you fight Dillian Whyte? It's a good fight to keep you busy, you know what I mean, and keep you going. And if the fight doesn't happen with Anthony Joshua, or you can't make the fight, it's still a good fight to have. Who else are you going to fight in the heavyweight division? You might as well take on Dillian Whyte. He'll keep you in shape, and it'll be a bit of a test, which is what you need, especially when you're going up against, you know, your biggest rival in the division. But now, the way I look at it, you know, I personally think Dillian Whyte should probably, after his performance, maybe should reconsider, maybe take a little bit more time, be a bit more patient. But I think definitely, you know, the fight Wilder and Joshua should happen next year. I don't think there's any reason as to why they shouldn't. You know, all Deontay Wilder is asking for is that he will get a guarantee if he fights Dillian Whyte, that he will end up fighting Anthony Joshua, and he wants it in the contract. And that's smart business, in my opinion. Very smart business. Why are you going to put yourself, say, all right, cool, I'll take your word for it, let's fight Dillian Whyte, and then he says, all right, let's have Anthony Joshua. Oh, no, sorry, we're not ready to make that fight just yet. Do you know what I mean? It's, in my opinion, you know, Eddie Hearn's definitely using Dillian Whyte as a roadblock. Now, I know a lot of UK fans are going to call, you know, make comments on this video if they watch the entire video. It is a lengthy video, and start criticising me for what I'm saying in here, and because I'm a British boxing fan. But like I told you, the reason I started this channel is because the reason I call it Keep It Real Boxing is because exactly what I want to do. I want to keep it real. Yeah, I was tired of channels showing unbelievable amounts of bias in their opinions of the sport. You know, there's loads of channels out there doing it, and they fabricate the truth. They make up stories, they make up things that are happening, they misinterpret and manipulate people out there into believing the wrong stuff. That's not what I'm trying to do here. I'm calling it exactly how it is, exactly how I see it. You know, and you know, basically, you know, in the day, I'm not a fanboy. I told you I'm not a fanboy. I've said this before. You know, I am not a fanboy. Yeah. I don't care about the whole UK US thing that people are trying to build here. I don't care about that. On fight night, I've told you before, I will always support a British fighter. Always on fight night, I will support them, root for them, and I will want them to win. But I'm in the build-up, in between that, or before that fight being made, I'm always going to tell the truth and be honest. I'm not going to show bias. And the problem is, there's a lot of channels out there doing that. You know, and it needs to stop, really. Like I said, not a fanboy. So a lot of fanboys out there, UK fanboys, you're going to get upset with what I'm saying. But like I said, I don't care. I'm always going to tell the truth. Simple as that. Well, for now, that's all I've got to say on this whole subject in the heavyweight division. It's a really long video. It's probably the longest video I've ever done, to be honest with you. Hoping you guys enjoyed it. Look, this probably ain't the only video I'm going to do on this. I'm sure there's things that I've missed out. I hope I haven't missed anything out, but I'm sure there's stuff I'm going to have to go back over again. But like I said, guys, I'm always going to tell you the truth. As always, like, share, subscribe to the channel, hit that bell notification icon. And until next time, this is Cypherbox reminding you to keep it real.